when I was I like to gamble, or I like to play. If blackjack is not available, blackjack. I'm sorry, if craps is not available, blackjack. Casinos, wherever we go, I tend to end up in a casino somewhere. I just enjoy it. Um, Not to mention, I'm pretty good at 21. And so I tend to go to casinos and I tend to play that because oftentimes the dice aren't available. I had the opportunity to talk to a guy from Denmark. And my wife, who loves me and I appreciate her loving me, we were there for over 4 hours because this got into an argument about the Iraq War. And keep in mind, their perspective of U.S. power abroad and that type of stuff could be a little bit different than our own. He wasn't a hardcore right-winger by our standards, but he was probably a right-winger by the standards of their country. But he goes into this notion of, because, people at this point, I'm black, so he knows me in some kind of way. You should accept the fact that jazz is amazing. And it's one of those things that the world is at the pinnacle of the world, and you guys created that. And I'm looking at him like, okay. He had a point. His point was individuals and people have not gotten to the point yet that human achievement in and of itself is sufficient for people to see something in themselves to aspire for more. Meaning, if I look out and the entire world, nothing of me or things that I consider me, especially in areas where we consider this world to be somewhat tribal, nothing of me has some level of achievement, and society looks down upon me as a thing to be derided. His point was that can wear individuals down, and each person, because human beings haven't gotten to the point of being able to just see human achievement as human achievement, all groups, all tribes need something to be able to latch into for a certain degree of esteem. Thing is, he has a point. The Harlem Renaissance was one of those things where they're like, oh my God, African Americans, they can think. They actually have feelings and emotions just like us. Will and grace for gays. And I make the point, Bill Cosby, the Cosby Show, the number of African Americans that started going to school after the Cosby Show spiked. Why? They saw a black doctor with a black lawyer as a wife and amazing fucking kids. And it was like, oh my God, we can be that way too. The things that you see have effects on you. Do not misunderstand me. There is a reflection from the standpoint of what society reflects out, but there's also this thing that goes back from the standpoint of what art reflects back to the society itself. And yeah, people kind of accrue around various things, positive or negative. There's not a cosmic God that makes it one way or the other. It's just kind of whatever's out there, some people accrue around. My point is, if positive things are out there, people will accrue around those positive things, especially individuals that are looking for something to invest themselves into. He was right. From that substantive, interesting point, we go to Tories, essentially the Democrats in the UK, with a stupid, brutally stupid, absurdly racist plan to stop knife crime. How? How are they going to deal with knife crime? They cut 20,000 cops. But how are they going to deal with knife crime? You know how Boris Johnson's Home Office decided to deal with knife crime? By putting knife-free, anti-knife crime messages on the backs of chicken boxes. Let me say that again. Boris Johnson and the Tories have decided to deal with knife crime by putting anti-knife crime messages on the back of fried chicken boxes. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Yeah, it really is that stupid. It is brutally, breathtakingly stupid. I looked at this and I said, God, that's so racist. And then I thought for a moment, well, wait a minute, the cultures might be different. They may not have that particular trope, like the watermelon eating black or the chicken eating black. They may not necessarily have that trope as being that vicious in the UK. I mean, but they were Europeans that came over to this country, and that stuff that they had over there, they seeded in us. It's not like we created that stuff. They do have that trope. And maybe that trope doesn't dig as deep, but that trope is there nonetheless. Two things are true at once. It is brutally racist. It's so brutally racist that it is comical in its element. But it's also comically stupid. Do you honestly believe that somebody is like, I was going to stab a guy, but I was eating this fried chicken, and this message about this person touched my heart. And so I'm not going to stab anybody. I'm just going to put the knife down and I'm going to enjoy my fried chicken. Thanks, Boris. That's absurd. Come on, please tell me you understand this is absurd on his face. I wish I was joking. I started this channel when Boris came. I said, bring on the circus. Bring on the clowns. Why did I say that? Because I assumed that there was going to be something stupid, criminally ridiculous, like this. And here we are. I would have never guessed that it would have been this stupid, where they would have been putting anti-knife crime messages on the back of chicken boxes. Who are you trying to reach with those anti-crime messages, Boris? People who I suppose eat fried chicken, right? And is there any kind of trope in that? Any kind of underlying trope in this notion that you're saying these knife-wielding chicken eaters, these knife-wielding chicken eaters that are going to be totally influenced by knife crime messages on the back of chicken boxes? They're paying for this. They cut 20,000 cops, and they're paying for this. The Tories, under Cameron, May, and now Johnson, has had an outright assault on the services of the UK. Do you realize they went after the NHS to such a degree that there were people dying in ambulances because the services had been cut to the bone to such a degree that they couldn't get them in the hospital? Ambulances lined up outside hospitals. Why? Because the Tories had cut so much. They cut so much. They cared less about the individuals involved in the process. Those people dying outside in the cold in the UK because of what the Tories did. Oh, they don't care about that part. They don't care about that part. And then when you get into PMQs, the only thing they want to tell you, we put this much money into the NHS, as if that was enough. If it was enough, those people wouldn't have been dying out in the ambulances. Do you realize they have another system called universal credit? The UN rapporteur, I want to give you his exact words. So I have this up. The UN rapporteur, Professor Philip Alston, UN Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights, said this November, report on poverty in the UK in the area of poverty-related policy. The evidence points to the conclusion that the driving force has not been economic, but rather a commitment in achieving a radical social re-engineering to pursue a single-minded focus of getting people into employment at all costs, and wanting to make clear that being on benefits should involve hardship. What he's talking about is universal credit, because the Tories implemented a new system for public benefits of universal credit. If you ever listen to PMQs, which I love, she continuously emphasizes that the goal of it is to get people in work. How do you get people in work? By making their lives miserable. They implemented a system with the explicit purpose of making people's lives miserable so they won't necessarily need or get those benefits. The assumption being, well, if they're going through all of this hardship to get the benefits, then maybe they need it. Otherwise, they just go to work. They are making people's lives miserable on purpose. The Democrats of the UK, Tories, bring on the circus. Send in the clowns. Boris Johnson. Look at this. Home Office puts out this tweet. We're rolling out our knife-free, #knife-free chicken boxes all over 210 chicken shops in England and Wales, including Morley's, Dixie Chicken, and Chicken Cottage. They use real stories to show people how they can go knife-free. Think about that. They put stories on the back of chicken boxes to tell people you can go knife-free. Here's Sean's true story. Apparently it ends with Sean going knife-free. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary. I'm sorry. Who's that stupid to do this? Like, you can't be that stupid. You can't be that stupid. There's no way. There's no way you're that stupid. My issue with, there's no way. There's no way he's that stupid. There's no way. There's no way. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I'm inclined to believe that this is done purely to shame and embarrass. Because there is no way you can convince me that they are so criminally stupid to believe that putting a message on the back of a fucking chicken box is going to somehow stop the guy with a knife from stabbing somebody else. Are you serious? Are you serious? This is astonishing. This is fucking astonishing. They are going to fucking dogs. I've argued that for Brexit, Boris Johnson is probably the best person for it. Not because he has any good ideas. Not because he's even a good person. Womanizer, flagrant liar, Boris Johnson. But he has one attribute that the other ones don't have. He will take the UK out of the European Union on October the 31st, come hell or high water. He staked all of his political capital on it. And he will do it however he needs to come across doing it. And of everybody else, the European Union knows that. Theresa May had no political capital to do anything, so they gave her nothing for that. I'm unclear on whether the European Union fully intends on going through with the threat of essentially this is all we're going to offer you, in which case we're going to have a no-deal Brexit. Maybe, maybe not. I would say this, though. I would imagine that they know he's serious about it, which in and of itself is a strength, and it's a strength that no other person has. Now, the moment that you get out that point, though, and you get into ideas and stuff, he falls off the cliff. He is not the person to lead the UK. He is comically stupid. And if you don't believe me, he's comically stupid. He's trying to deal with knife crime with putting messages on chicken boxes. That's how comically stupid he is. And he is now leader of the UK. I don't even think Trump would have been that bonkers. Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson. Fighter of knife crime. Hashtag knife free. Knife free. Can't be that stupid. I'm inclined to believe this is purely just a shame and maim. And shame of a particular demographic. I could be wrong. You could make the argument that everybody eats chicken, fair enough. And again, there's a cultural difference. And so maybe it doesn't dig as deep. The catch here is there are people in the UK who have a dark skin who are screaming the same thing. Like, what the fuck is this? And she makes a really good point. Instead of investing in public health approach to violent crime, the Home Office have opted for another crude, offensive, and probably expensive campaign. They would do better to invest in the communities than demonize them. Instead of taking whatever money you decided to put into this comically stupid, brutally ineffective campaign of telling people who are trying to eat chicken that they should go knife free, if indeed they were wielding a knife. That money could have been invested into ensuring that, people had a better standard of living. And by the way, maybe even investing back in those cops. And this is not me, rah-rahing the cops. But if you cut 20,000 cops and then you get a knife crime epidemic, do you realize right now London is worse than New York? They're having knife crimes every day. Not necessarily people dying by them, but they have a knife crime epidemic that has made London an unsafe place to be. One of those knife crimes took place in broad daylight at 2 p.m. London is more violent than New York at this point. But Boris Johnson is on the job. He's on the job. No, you're probably not going to get those cops back. But what we can do, totally effective, is we can put messages on the back of chicken boxes. That'll totally do it. That'll totally do it. There's Sean's true story. That's Sean's true story, by the way. Yeah, Sean's true story. True story. you know, because when you're eating some fried chicken, you know, I was going to stab a motherfucker, but now that I'm reading Sean's true story, I think I'm going to put the knife down. What happens if he wants to stab a motherfucker and he just not eating fried chicken? Then what? Then what? That's amazing. That's fucking amazing. And again, and by the way, Sadiq Khan, I have no love of Sadiq Khan. Look, the left, the Labor left in the UK is just as much identitarians as they are here in the United States. Just as bit as much. I am... So don't misunderstand me. This is not love for Sadiq Khan. Sadiq Khan could be doing other things other than, you know, naming streets or something. There's a knife crime epidemic. I have no idea what Sadiq Khan is doing in the UK for a knife crime epidemic, and that in and of itself should be a problem. If I know about the knife crime epidemic, meaning I'm in the US, I know that the UK has a knife crime epidemic. I should at the very least know who the mayor of London is, which I do know, Sadiq Khan. But I should also know what he's doing about it. I should know what he's doing about it. So, yeah, I'm solid. Fair enough. I'm not taking him off the thing here. But we're talking about the federal government of the UK investing in messages on boxes of fried fucking chicken. Are you serious? Are you serious? Lord Glitty, what reality are we in? Lord, I don't know, man. I don't know. Gardner, I could go for some fried chicken. That pick made me hungry. Not just hunger, Garden. It made me not want to stab anybody. It did that too. It made me not want to stab anybody. I swear, man. I had a rough day, man. I had a very angry day. There was all sorts of shit that pissed me off today. And then after getting pissed off, being embarrassed about the fact that I was pissed off, being ashamed about the fact that I'm pissed off, all those feelings that go with just being a person. But I read that chicken box. It calmed me down. It calmed me down. It calmed me down, man. It calmed me down. I was like, man, I want to stab a motherfucker. And then I did the story. And I saw this. And I immediately calmed down. And like Gardner said, I wanted some fried chicken. But hey, like those Tories say, I'm predisposed to liking fried chicken. So, you know, there's that. The Tories don't say that. They say it in the United States. I don't know what they say in the UK. I'm just saying, this is breathtakingly stupid. And I gotta be honest, I am solid. You do have a point. Where is Sadiq Khan? Sadiq Khan is the mayor of London. There is literally a stabbing at 2 in the evening. Where's Sadiq Khan? Is he saying I have no powers to do anything about this process? If so, you shouldn't be mayor. And, you know, these identitarians that like the guy because he's, you know, Muslim or something. Fuck that. I don't give a shit what his heritage is. I care about whether or not he can do the job. Do you realize Boris Johnson used to be mayor of London? If there was a knife crime epidemic while Boris Johnson was mayor, would Boris Johnson fade into the wall? Well, I don't think so. Maybe not. By the same token, you can also make the argument that Boris Johnson is a prime minister and this is the stupid shit that they're planning on doing. So that's a fair point also. All I'm saying is this is brutally and breathtakingly stupid. That's what this is. Whatever else you want to call it, let's stay there for a moment. And then before, on the next stone, let's say brutally and breathtakingly ineffective on top of being brutally and breathtakingly stupid. And you can call it breathtakingly racist. Fair enough. But so much so that it is just fucking funny. I'm sorry. I laughed so hard at this. Like, and I was laughing at this because I was like, there is no fucking way he's believing this is effective. And then I started getting mad because I was like, There's no way he believes this is effective, so it can't be because it's effective. This has to be just to kind of wag the finger. And then I thought, maybe he thinks it is effective. And you have some people who are like, I don't see what's racist about that at all. We're just, we're going after the demographic that we think are committing knife crimes. We just so happen to be the fried chicken eaters. I don't know. I don't know what is in his heart. So I'm not going to go there. I'm going to say it's breathtakingly stupid and breathtakingly ineffective. And if he thought that this was effective, wow, they spent money on this. And no, the whole knife industry doesn't have to go. So right there, that's a good point. It's funny, when I read the story, I'm consistent here. I am the person, when people got shot, who made the argument that trying to do away with the guns doesn't get to the heart of the issue. Go back and look at my old videos. Getting rid of the guns doesn't, because what is the thing that's getting those people to the point of saying, I want to take somebody else's life, and I want to rip away a lot of people's lives? And whether that's with a gun or whether that's with a knife. The reason why I said that is because I knew Britain had a knife crime problem, and I just knew that taking away the guns doesn't necessarily entirely get rid of it. But I've made that argument on more than one occasion. It goes beyond the guns. What is it in the individual? What is it in the culture of the society? What is it dumping into that person, that individual, that make them in that moment say, I need to rip away the breath from a lot of other human beings? That goes beyond the gun. I am consistent here. Pragmatic cynicism. Maybe Thanksgiving turkeys should come with a story about native right. Isn't that amazing? Could you imagine the Democratic Party saying, you know what? We're going to deal with all these white nationalists by putting a story about a white nationalist that decided not to be a white nationalist. This is breathtakingly stupid. This is so stupid. God, this is so stupid. The billions London has spent in hyper surveillance has really helped out. I know, right? Like I said, somebody got stabbed at 2 a.m, at 2 p.m, the broad daylight. I would invest, if it was me, and Boris asked for my advice, he's not, I would invest in your public services. That's what I would do. I know it's not a one-to-one in the sense of stopping knife crime in a one-to-one way. But if you're trying to get at why people do those things and prevent other generations from doing those things, I would start at this notion of poverty and this notion of your universal credit system that makes people's lives miserable. Not just that, attacking the healthcare service and all this other stuff. Invest in your society. And maybe this shit wouldn't happen. And again, I don't think it's a one-to-one. And I suppose that you have to do two things at once. You have to invest in the society, but you also have to stop the knife crime. I mean, you can't allow people being stabbed while you're investing in your society. People are not going to go for it. These things don't have great answers at the point where you have an epidemic of knife crime. I don't think putting a bunch of cops on the street is a good alternative. I don't think that because I'm a lefty. From the standpoint of society itself, society is like, fuck that, we want those cops. I'm just saying. Those are different issues. Like, those are different conversations. Whatever you want to think about the hyper-surveillance guard, can we at the very least agree that putting the message on the back of a chicken box is not going to do it? I think what they're talking about is kind of like this. Like the smoking thing. Like, smoking causes cancer. I think that's what they're getting at. The problem is a knife is not a cigarette. It's not the same thing. It's not a one-to-one. God, that's so stupid. I can't believe they're doing this. Yes, perhaps there's something that is causing people to stab. Yes, I would absolutely say that. See, the difference here is I look at this stuff as a community issue. I don't look at this as I look at this as a society issue, not as an individual issue. They look at it as purely an individual choice. I don't look at it as purely an individual choice. I don't look. My mom hates it when I say this, but this notion of free will is dicey at best. even if you have a perspective of things, something obstructed the perspective that you have of those things, and even if you can stand outside of that and even know that that's taking place, it still doesn't matter. Wherever you are is where you're at. What caused those people to do that? Society says it's an individual choice. They made the choice to take the knife and go out and do it. And you could say in a technical sense, they did grab the knife and they did use that knife and they wielded that knife. I'm also getting into the software. More so what went into the software to allow that software to control that hardware to do what that hardware did, looking at the person as somewhat of a machine in this sense. And I know it's not an absolute. There may be an aspect of us that goes beyond that. I tend to believe that. No, not Jesus and all that other stuff. But the question needs to be asked from a societal standpoint. What is your society doing that's provoking that? Because I don't think individuals left to their own devices in a society where they had all of their needs met does that. Maybe a probability. It's not an epidemic. Perhaps the gutting of your system with austerity caused more problems than you're willing to consider. And I also want to kind of bring up the point that the reason you gut your system with that austerity is because of a banking crash that was caused by the banks that you use public money to cover. And then turn around and put austerity on the public itself. I mean, for fuck's sake. Yeah, there are consequences. Fucking bad behavior. It's not that, people duck stab, dude. It's hardwired. Environmental conditions encourage. I love it. $1,000 getting stabbed. Taco fantasies. Oh, right. They need to expand to the taco. Oh, man. Can you imagine if they did that shit? If they put it in taco box. Oh, my God. Like in every Taco Bell box, there was a, hey, Pablo. Stabbing. Put the knife down, dog. Yeah, man. This is horrible. This is horrible. Bring on the clowns. Comically stupid. I don't even think Trump would have did this. Honestly, I don't even think Trump would have did this. It's bizarre. The disease of despair. Yeah, Chris Hedges. Yeah. I'll end it here. This video wasn't meant to be long. I guess we were just fucking around laughing. Like I said, it's so breathtakingly racist that it's funny. I would have never expected this. Like, this is one of those bring on the circus, bring on the clowns. I suspect that my laughing at this is more because I'm not in those communities. But this looks like a finger wag. Because there's no way. If he believes that this is effective, then he needs to be voted out of office. Because this is comically stupid. Also, Sadiq Khan, paging fucking Sadiq Khan. There is a knife crime epidemic and you're the mayor. If Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of a knife crime epidemic, what do you think Giuliani would do? What do you think Bloomberg would do? I guess I'm getting to the point. You guys gut those services. The right wing in that country gut those services. Gut them. 20,000 cops off the street. We got to save money. It's like having a bunch of houses burned down and they gut the fire department by 20,000 firefighters. And they look at us like, we got to save money. We got to get rid of firefighters. That's astonishing. I can't believe. Fucking astonishing. Utterly astonishing. Right, I stabbed the sheriff. I didn't stab the deputy. I think a knife is easier slightly to dodge than a bullet. Well, my karate can kick in with a knife. Kung fu. I watch those blaxploitation films. I know all sorts of kung fu. Have you watched Dolomite? Dolomite be kicking ass. There's a scene in one of Dolomite films where he's like a cops are trying to shake him down. There's like 3 deputies or something, and he's just come out having sex with this woman. It's blaxploitation films. Those things was fucking hilarious. I used to watch those things as a kid. I used to watch those shows as a child. But there's a scene he's coming out of the sheriff's wife. He just had sex with the sheriff's wife, and he's walking out. The sheriff's there. They're trying to shake him down, and they look into his car and they pull out a bag of cocaine. And he's like, "You motherfuckers are trying to shake me down." And he starts doing like this horrible karate in order to beat the 3 sheriffs. There's another scene. One of the best scenes. He's trying to get information. He needs to get information because he needs to find where his girls are. Now, his girls are essentially prostitutes, where he's like kind of like the Mac Daddy of this. This is blaxploitation. This type of shit they had. The sheriff's wife knew where they were keeping them. And so he goes and macks on the sheriff's wife. He has sex with the sheriff's wife. And there's a scene where he's like, he's going in and the room is shaking and there's like stuff is falling all around. And he's like, where's Captain Lady hiding my girls? Where's Captain Lady hiding my girls? And the entire scene is him having sex with that woman, screaming at her, where's Captain Lady hiding my girls? And she's like essentially giving up all this information. And even when he's gone, she's still giving up information. He runs out the house butt naked because the sheriff comes in. And he jumps off the cliff and he's like rolling down. And he's like, you motherfuckers don't believe I did that? And he rewinds and he does it again. Those films were atrociously funny. Those films are atrociously funny. And no self-respecting parent should have their 8-year-old watching those films. But I turned out okay. This is fucking hilarious. Poor Pretty Eddie is one of the craziest blaxploitation films. I'm going to have to look that one up. Poor Pretty Eddie. Man, that shit, those films, man. And do you realize Dolomite made like 8 films? And it was like those things were like kind of underground. But funny. Horrible, but funny. Horrible, but funny. But yeah, these are old films. Like this stuff came out like in the 60s and 70s. Like all sorts of insecurities and stuff just kind of comes out of the films. Because the audience is the audience. You know, it is what it is. Superfly. Yeah, Superfly is really good too, Guard. Hey, you know what's funny? Speaking about this thing of, we're just fucking around at this point. But there's a clip my wife showed me. I think it was on CNN. And it was Don Lemon. And Don Lemon had 3 other black people on. Like, everybody on CNN was black. God, I need to find that clip. It's the funniest shit ever. Everybody on there was black. One guy was a black Republican. And he says something that, I know what it was. Somebody went into a, what was the restaurant? Somebody went into a restaurant with a Make America Great, it was like the Cheese Factory or something, with a Make America Great hat on, Trump hat on. And they like asked them to leave or kicked them out or something like that. And they talked to the black Republican, and the black Republican kind of gave this answer of like, yeah, I mean, people should be able to eat wherever they want to eat, whatever they had, blah, blah, blah. And then they get to one of the other guys who started kind of laughing, but he keeps himself together. And Don Lemon's like, well, you have something to say about this? And he says, I'm just curious why dude was in the Cracker Barrel. I mean, why the hell was that black guy in the Cracker Barrel? Now, everybody cracks up because everybody gets the joke. Now, the black Republican doesn't get the joke, or he doesn't think the joke is funny. Now, the joke wasn't made necessarily at his expense, but it essentially ended anything that he had to say because shit was absolutely hilarious. There's a tribal aspect to that. The tribal aspect, and not in a negative way, anybody in a particular society, especially when that society breaks down along certain lines, has their own experience. It's what it is. Sometimes I think it's unfair to whites because people act like whites' experience is not an experience. It is. It's not. And to be fair, the other way, whites sometimes act, and they don't do this on purpose. Media does this, as if that experience is the center point. Like everything else is second. Everything else is in relation to that experience, and that's nonsense. All of these experiences are relative to one another. One isn't necessarily better than the other. They just are where they are. A person explains it from their particular perspective, from their particular experience. And the other person does too. And there may be other factors, meaning an objective reality that makes what they're saying more or less true, but it is the way a particular thing sees it. Sometimes, though, from a cultural standpoint, there's certain things that people within a particular culture get a little bit more so. When I was in Germany, the woman... I went to a comedy thing. I'm literally walking around the streets of Germany. You guys know when I was traveling, I do treatments. I do dialysis. And I need to control my fluid, because if my fluid gets out of whack, then it's going to fuck up the trip. I'm not going to be able to continue the trip. And so in the various places, I had to do saunas. So what the sauna would do is it would bleed out stuff out of my skin. So like potassium and other kind of metals and stuff like that would cause a problem that I would have even if I kept my balance low. I know this is inside baseball and this is probably too much information, but I need you to explain it. Or at the very least, the explanation helps with where I'm going. And so my treatments weren't regular because those treatments had to be paid for. And so you kind of had to leverage on what you could tolerate versus what you could afford. And it depended on where you were. Some places were more expensive than others. Germany was expensive, and so there was no way to get several treatments in Germany. Not to mention, at that point, I was on my way home because my mom was ill. But nevertheless, saunas were a way of helping out with that in the middle ground, because saunas allowed liquid to be bleached out of your skin, but also metals to be bleached out of your skin. It prevented you from going into some kind of potassium or some kind of other issue with toxicity. So I would go to saunas. Now, this wasn't an issue anywhere else. Everywhere else I went, no issue. Germany has a thing with nudity. And so German saunas are nude saunas. Butt naked. Co-ed, butt naked saunas. Now, this is no issue with this. This is entirely cultural, meaning from the standpoint of the United States, there's no goalposts. Everything is relative to something else. And so my relative cultural experience was being ashamed of my body, viciously so. And I thought it was a cultural achievement for me to just take my shirt off. And that's where I was. I didn't realize that all of these places were entirely nude. I just wanted to sweat, and I just wanted to sweat in peace. And that wasn't what happened. So I did go to the sauna. I kept my eyes down. I didn't want people to think I was perving out because I had my shorts on. And at that time, that wasn't the sauna where I took my shorts off. In fact, I thought it would have been more embarrassing because I thought more eyes would have been on me, being the darkest person in that room and being the only one with shorts on. So I sat there, I sweated, and then I got the fuck out of Dodge. I was embarrassed. Now, I go walking through the streets of Berlin, and as I'm walking through the streets of Berlin, I'm like, God, man, I don't want to go back home yet. I would have had to take a bus back to Potsdam, and then, from Berlin to Potsdam. And so I was like, well, let's find a club. Let's find something to do. So I found a comedy club. All of the people in the comedy club were African American. I shit you not. I am in the middle of Berlin, just walking the streets of Berlin, end up in a comedy club, and everybody in that club is black. Or at the very least, all of the acts, all of the people who are doing the acts. The woman sees me in the audience. She's like, I think that's a Negro back there. She didn't say it in those terms, but just messing around. And she's like, I think that guy's black. Like, she's like, I can see her looking, I think that guy's black. And at that point, I kind of like wanted to get across, like, yeah, I am. Your thinking is right. We're on the same page. And throughout the act, she would be like, the brother back there gets it, the brother back there gets it. It's the funniest shit ever. You know what she talks about in her act? Germany's thing with nudity. And how Germany, where she had the exact same experience I did, where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go without no shirt on, I was always ashamed of it. I had, when I was younger, I had tits growing up. I had breasts. And at a certain age, I got them surgically removed. It was, I forget the name of it, in order to have just somewhat a regular chest. I was always ashamed of it and bothered by it. And then when I got older, as I got older, I cared less about it, if that makes sense. It was almost, I cared about it when I was younger. And here I was like, well, fuck it. What do I care? I don't know these people. And even if I didn't know these people, it's one of those things of the people who care don't really matter. And the people that don't care, or the people who you know and you care about usually don't care about that stuff. And the people who you don't know don't really matter. Not to mention you're in the middle of a foreign country and these guys are all into the nudity thing. So fuck it, let's do it. Now I have surgical scars. I have more surgical scars probably than anybody else you'd ever know. But in this case, I have several large ones going all the way down, and another one going all the way up from multiple bowel resections. Yes, I'm a petri dish. But I still said, fuck, let's do it. Doesn't matter. They're jagged, they're grotesque, nobody cares, I don't care. But my point is, she makes the same thing though. She says the same thing. She's like, I'm at a beach, and she said, all of these people are naked. Like, all of these people, none of these people have clothes on. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? What is with these people in nudity? And she says, same thing I did, same rationale. Fuck it, let's do it. And she says, she's like just walking, no shirt on. She was like, I was letting my girls out. And she says, a guy walked up to her and said, Oreos, pointing at her nipples. And she was like, what? Like, motherfucker. Oh, God. Why have you had intestinal resections? So I've had several bowel resections. I've had 3. When I was younger, I developed kidney failure. Now, that kidney failure has other consequences. One of the treatments that they use is dialysis, in which case they have several modalities. Peritoneal. Peritoneal comes into CAPD and CPD. Continuous ambulatory peritoneal dialysis, and I forget the other one. But the other one goes at night. It's like it's for long duration. At the time when I was younger, when I was in college, I was doing CAPD. Because ultimately I had to go to school, and so the school had to be leveled within the context of treatments. And at that point I was 17, I had just started, and I would go to class, come back to treatment, go to class, that type of stuff. That didn't work at all. That didn't happen at all. What I did when I was 17, I had a lot of sex, I smoked a lot of weed, and I fucked around. That's what I did. When I did have a nurse and a doctor who I drove fucking bananas. I drove nuts. I feel so bad for that nurse because I drove that nurse to her wit's end. By the same token, you have a 17-year-old who just been told that he has a disease or an illness, and not even a disease, an end stage of a disease. The disease had already taken place from the time you were 12 years old to the time you were 17 when it presented. Disease is finished, dog. You're at the end stage. Why it happened? Why did it happen? And the doctor says it's idiopathic. Idiopathic. I love the language. You know what that means? It means it just happened. That's a medical terminology for it just happened. It's them coding it with medical language, as opposed to just saying we have no fucking idea what that happened. Look, the CAPD uses fluid that it dumps into your peritoneum cavity. And the fluid that it dumps is like a heavy fluid. It's a heavy liquid. It's a glucose solution. And depending on the size of the glucose solution, has a amount of material that's pulled out of your system. It's like it pulls like waste materials, things that you can't like minerals and that type of stuff that you don't necessarily want in your system because it grows in excess and you can't excrete it. It exchanges it for glucose. It's just osmosis. It's diffusion. And it takes a period of time for it to do that. And you have various solutions that allow you to do it depending on how much fluid you need to pull. So that works ideally under normal circumstances. Usually. There are problems, however, that can arise with that particular treatment modality. There's a catheter that sticks out of your stomach. It's like a tube that literally comes out of your stomach and just kind of sits there. It's grotesque, if I'm being honest. And it creates extraordinarily fucked up sense of self. Now, it doesn't do that on its own. I mean, in and of itself is nothing. I mean, it's the person and the psychology that allows it to feel one way or the other. But I would say that if you had 100 people, and if, let's say, 75 feel a particular way about it, then I'm going to say, based on this particular culture and this particular society, this particular person has this particular outcome, in a majority of the time, with this particular issue. Now, that doesn't really matter. That matters less, to be honest. What matters more is that you don't die. And so this is the treatment modality that they can use. The other treatment modality is hemodialysis. That is when you get on a machine for 3 or 4 hours where they put needles in you that are sized to ink pens, about this size, in order to pull fluid and other bad stuff out of you. At the time, I was doing CAPD. I was a kid. I couldn't imagine people doing home hemo, if I'm being honest. Couldn't imagine that shit at all. And I went through this phase of, all right, I don't accept this, and I'm gonna fix this myself. I don't acquiesce to authority well. I mean, even when it's one of those authorities where you don't necessarily have a choice but to acquiesce to, meaning just reality. You know, I pushed hard against that, and I just pushed hard against it. I started studying herbology. I got a degree in holistic nutrition, certificates in herbology. I mean, my goal was I was going to cure it myself. If the doctors don't necessarily have anything what they can do for it, fine. I will figure it out on my own. There is a level of hubris with that I can appreciate looking back on it, but that is fucking insane. That is fucking insane. There was several outcomes, several problems. I ended up getting infections. And it wasn't because of that. The infections were something separate and distinct. But I started getting infections. And one of the problems associated with COPD is peritonitis. Peritonitis is an infection either in the lining of the peritoneum cavity, but sometimes it can be an infection in the Tinkoff itself. And if it's in the Tinkoff, that has to come out, meaning another surgery. In my case, it started off as several infections of the peritoneum cavity. The first one was the most vicious one. One of the most vicious ones. I'm telling you this for a reason. There's a reason. You asked me a question, so I'm giving you an answer. I was in school. I was laid up with this woman that I met there. In fact, my neighbor. I didn't go that far. She was across the hall. I was having sex with her. And we were, it's what it is. It wasn't a relationship. Just having sex. But, you know, anybody that I have sex with, I'm friends with first. I don't believe in this thing of just kind of hooking up. People could be insane. And her and I got along extremely well. Even though relationships always breed weirdness. I don't remember how this happens, but I am ill. I'm getting sick. I am in a lot of pain. My peritoneum cavity is infected. And she's either in the room or she finds out or she sees me or I have to go get her. That's what it is. I have to go get her. We're pissed off at each other for something. And I have to kind of lure myself, be like, look, I'm in a lot of pain. Don't panic. I need to get to the hospital. And now Farmville had this little podunk hospital that had like 3 floors, so the thing was fucking horrible. And she didn't have a driver's license. She didn't know how to drive. And I'm in a lot of pain. Like it is taking everything in me to just calmly not freak her out. When I tell people like crying is not beneficial, I'm saying this from experience. I'm saying this from the experience of somebody who's in the hospital bed, near death, and that person weeping over me does nothing for me. It does everything for that person. Your job, your responsibility in any position of strength is to not do that. In this particular situation, I am trying to keep her calm because she is already freaking the fuck out. She knows I'm in a lot of pain. She doesn't know how to drive. And she is doing everything she can to get us to the hospital in one piece in my car. She nearly hits something a few times, but for the most part, it takes a while. But we get there. My doctor, Dr. Ayer, a man who I derided relentlessly for the entire time I had been there, comes in and he is a boss. Now, Dr. Ayer can be an asshole in general. Ending that guy. And he goes in and he tells the nurse, Mr. Thomas is going to be on 3rd floor. Just outright. And they're like, well, we don't quite know how to deal with this. He says, exactly. You don't know how to deal with this. Mr. Thomas is going to be on the 3rd floor. I am running a fever at this point. My temperature is at 103. I am freezing. And I'm like, fuck that. 3rd floor, they can put me wherever the fuck they want to put me. Just start treating me. I don't care. Just start treating me. And he's having this showdown with the nurses on about Mr. Thomas is going to, this is my patient. And my patient is going to that floor. You guys are completely incapable of dealing with this type of issue. And he's flipping out. And I am in pain. And I just want to be seen. Dr. Ayer doesn't get quite what he wants, but he does get partially what he wants. I am in the hospital. And I am mortified when I find out that she's gone around to collect things on my behalf as like a thank you card. When I was younger, I didn't treat that well. I didn't deal with that well. I used to get into these big fights with my mom and my grandmother over stuff of independence and asserting what I want. Like sometimes when you're ill, you have other people who try to assert what they want on your behalf. And it's in a cosmically right way to assert yourself. However you need to do that. Period. As an absolute. And there's no hedge, there's no cover on that. I don't give a shit what the situation is. In situations where you have other people who are around you who are telling you what you should and should not do, people who they want around you, the spooks and the spirits that they want to pray. fuck that. Assert. I don't care if they feel bad. They shouldn't be trying to step on what you want to do. I don't care if they have hard feelings about it. I don't care if they have something to say about it. I don't care. I pissed off a lot of my family members in this case. But it's because they weren't listening to me. If they were listening to me, they wouldn't have been pissed off. Do you realize I had a family member that came to the hospital one time, and I had just had a surgery. This was after one of those stomach surgeries. And the doctor was a drunk, and he fucked up. And he fucked up in a way that for years after, my stomach was jacked up. One of the other doctors come and he's like, wow, your stomach was a mess. No shit. But I tell you this, that doctor would never go on the record to say that. He would only say it to you after that surgery where he had to go through in order to fix that mess. I've had several of those infections. And those infections eventually got to the point where it completely destroyed the catheter. At the point where the catheter got infected, the catheter had to come out. They put another catheter in. That catheter ends up getting infected. Now, but here's the catch. Your peritoneum cavity creates what's called adhesions. Now, adhesions are scar tissue. It's like, think of like fibrin and those type of things. That fibrin sometimes gets to the point where, if it's bad, can wrap around your intestine and choke the life out of your intestine. It's one of those side effects of getting peritonitis with COPD. When it does that, the material that is in your intestines can't get from point A to point B. And you experience that as severe pain. Now, that's not peritonitis at this point. In fact, you don't even have to have a catheter. And I think when this stuff started acting up, I don't even think I had a catheter. It is literally just scar tissue left over from having that particular catheter. And it wraps around your intestines. Every so often, it would do it. Not recently, but beforehand, it did it on multiple occasions. What ends up happening is the surgeon has to go in and he has to cut one part off and he has to cut the other part off and he has to sew those pieces back together, which is what he did. They've had to do that twice. The third time, they almost had to do it. And that because I was eating peanuts and that's a whole nother story. After that surgery, I don't tolerate peanuts well. The fiber of the peanuts gets stuck, in which case it creates something that looks like an intestinal blockage, even though it's not really an intestinal blockage. So, yeah. That's not a 30-second answer. But that's essentially what happened. Oh, Amanda's a troll. Don't feed the trolls. Don't feed the trolls. Don't feed the trolls. She's not a real person. She's a troll. Damn, just found you online by watching a vid from earlier on Epstein. Oh, cool. Yeah, don't feed the trolls. Amanda's a troll. She doesn't count. Yeah, why do you guys feed the trolls? I don't understand the feeding the trolls thing. If you don't feed it, it'll die. I promise you. Oh, I didn't say you weren't. I know you're a real bitch. I'm saying not real. Like I've had people who came on this channel who started off as trolls, and they start engaging in regards to what takes place. I'm saying not real in the sense of the goal is not to engage. The goal is just to be an asshole. That's not a real person. That's an anonymous person that just fucks around. Better strong. Feed the trolls harder. Feed them harder. Get them fat, and they'll die off in that pace. Yeah, man. So that's how that happened. Those you know, I've gotten to the point where I look at surgeries as changing a muffler, and my nobody else looks at it that way. I look at it as changing a muffler. It's like, because if you have something that's severe, let's say you have cancer, like that's something that you can't necessarily just fix with surgery per se. If you have something that you can just cut out, that sucks. But it sucks in somewhat of a limited way. You can always take pain medication to deal with the pain, and ultimately the surgery is going to take, a day or so. Over the context of a lifetime, it's not a big deal. But that's after fucking 20, 30 surgeries. All right. At this point, we've been fucking around for like an hour. changing in the plumbing so your body can heal itself. Yeah, more or less. That bit you did about MSNBC, that was awesome. I like Matt Taibbi too. Yeah, Matt Taibbi is awesome, man. Matt Taibbi is awesome, and thank you, I appreciate it. I like my videos recently. There are days where doing a show is interesting, and it's odd in some respects. If you feel miserable and you go to work, for the most part, you just feel miserable and go to work, and you try to mutter along as you can, even though your output and everything else is going to be less. You can't do that really with a show, because you're in front of a lot of people, and they're going to be trolls like Amanda. I'm not making you go away, Amanda. I haven't silenced you. You're still here. I haven't silenced you. My hope is that you would engage us in a real way, as opposed to just stop being an asshole. That's my hope. That's my hope. You have a good night, Jamal. Thank you, Pat. Strong, you too. But nobody's making you go away. Nobody's making you go away. In fact, look, sometimes you say things where I'm like, fuck, she has a point. So nobody's making you go away. The trolls sometimes are good things. I'm about the only one who doesn't sheep. No, there are a lot of people who don't sheep, Amanda. I will tell you this. Half of my audience will have a go at me any day of the week. Garden Gnome is one of them. Patterstrone. I can count them out. Will have a go at me anytime. Sheeple my ass. This channel doesn't breed sheeple. Do you realize when I start my videos, I literally go into this notion that mainstream media is trying to create a narrative that it wants you to believe in. I am trying to do the same thing, but at the very least, I'm trying to tell you what's behind the scenes. Sheeple, no. Thinking, yes. In which case, people disagree with me all the time. It just is, just deal with it. And by the way, again, you said something one day, and I was like, fuck, I think, I didn't say that bitch has a point. I think I said, fuck, I think she has a point. The reason I think a bitch, because you said I'm a real bitch. That's why it's in my head. But I was like, fuck, she has a point. She has a point. That was before I knew you were a troll. But even whether you were a troll or not, still. So no, I don't push people away in this case. I don't push people away. Pretty fresh opinions here, yeah. You fight with Jamal all the time. Yes, you fight with me all the time. Yes. You follow TYT. Now that I don't do. That I don't do. Which makes me think I don't think you watch my show. When you do the show, you have to there has to be a certain energy about it. Like if you're feeling shitty, if you're feeling miserable, if you are overweight. I forgot who it was. I had a lot of fluid on. Again, my fluid fluctuates because I can't control it. It's not something that I can control in the sense of getting rid of it in a way a normal person does. I have to have treatments. And my work schedule completely interferes with any notion of a treatment schedule. But that's fine. At this point, I'm accustomed to it. But that means I need to be more careful about the amount I take in. And sometimes go through other means like saunas and that type of stuff to get it out. When I was traveling, I was 82 kilos. 82 kilos. Fucking awesome weight. When I got back to the States, it went up to 92 kilos. I shit you not. I gained 15 pounds within the course of like a month and a half of being back in the States. Fucking amazing. I am only just now getting my weight back to normal. I part of it had to do with when I was, this sounds really fucked up. When I was in Berlin, and maybe even Poland, but more so Berlin. When I was in Berlin, in order to get to the train station, or let's think of it this way, it's like public transportation in Warsaw, in Poland, is amazing. You can get to anywhere with public transportation. And so Ubers are like $1 or $2. Dirt cheap. It is a beautiful, beautiful city if you want to go to Europe on the cheap and still get that feeling of Europe. And so I would, by the same token, it's like 2 degrees outside. It's fucking cold. It's brutally cold. I was cold constantly. When my mom called me and I'm sitting in the room brutally cold because it was entirely cold the entire time. There was no heating in the room. You're in Berlin and you're in Warsaw and there's no heating. I could not believe it. They gave you this little mini heater. But everywhere you go, you're walking. or you're taking public transportation, you're doing this, or you're doing that. So even though the public transportation, when I would get off, I would have to walk all the way back. And most of the time, I didn't even take public. I just walked. Especially when I need to get to a bus or a train, or if I need to get to the mall or whatever else. A McDonald's knows its shit because McDonald's stays open late. And so when you're on your way back after walking all day and you're starving, McDonald's in Berlin, or even Warsaw. Berlin, it's a train station. Potsdam train station, McDonald's is the last thing to close. And so when you're coming back in late at like 2 in the morning or 11 at night or 12 at night, the McDonald's would be the thing that's open on your way back home. So again, McDonald's is cornering the market. But that never showed in my weight. Why didn't it show in my weight? Because you're exercising constantly. You don't have a car. Anywhere you go to, you have to walk. On the rare chances you take a cab, it's few and far between. You go back to the States, and everywhere you go, you drive. Everywhere you go, you drive. Your life just gets sedentary. I've said it on more than one occasion. Traveling makes me a better person, man. I don't act that way. And my wife, even the same thing happened to her. At this point, I've gotten to the point of getting it down to like 2 kilos away from my dry weight, or to my traveling weight. But that's been a fight, man. That's been a fucking fight. But my point is this. I get joked for that too. Like when you're doing your show, all of that stuff shows. And so you have all sorts of people who are anonymous and you just talk shit from the shadows. Anything that you do for the most part shows. You can't hide it. If you're feeling miserable, you probably don't want to do a show when you're feeling miserable. If you're doing angry, it is probably going to show, and whatever you're doing for the show. However you are, shows. And especially with this show, because I don't try to hide it. I'm me. There's no... How I interact here is how I interact in person. It's just like a one-to-one, exactly the same. That's beneficial because I don't need to put it on air, so I don't need to be anything else. It can be problematic because, I can be somewhat long-winded. And my wife is like, move it along. So yeah. Buttigieg has actual policies now. Does he now? I thought he was just gay. I'm gay. Vote me in. He'll be your first gay president. Look, the identitarians, I know there are a lot of them out there. I gotta be honest. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're straight. I don't care if you're black, white, Chinese. I don't care. You can be an alien from the planet Zepton. Are you pushing Medicare for all? Yes or no? Yes or no? Let's start there. Are you dealing with college? Are we going to focus more so on human wellness as opposed to just profit? You got my vote. I don't care, man. I don't care about that other stuff. I care about policy. Oh, by the way, Buttigieg is number one in something. He has more billionaires than anybody else, including Joe Biden. More than Joe Biden. Off topic, but what's your stance on Yang? Trojan horse for legit progressive? I don't think he's neither. He doesn't have to be either. Does he? Does he have to be either? And let me understand what I mean. Like what is Joe Rogan? Is Joe Rogan a progressive? Joe Rogan says stuff sometimes where you're like, that's pretty to the left. I mean, he's talking to Sanders and he's like, yeah, I can get behind that guy. By the same token, he's also said some stuff where you're like, fuck, that's pretty right-wing shit. He's not either. He's just a person. He's not ensconced in one camp or the other in this sense. And I got to be honest, that's kind of a better place to be. The perspective, it gives you, I don't know, it's like you have to float between these perspectives. That's all. But I don't think I don't know if he's a Trojan horse or not. It depends on what his policies are. My liking of Yang, I would never vote for him, but my liking of him has more to do with Yang looking at our system as an actual system. And it's talking about it in the context of beyond capitalism, or at the very least beyond capitalism in a way it is currently arranged. Nobody else does that. Not even Sanders. Like, I would love for Sanders to talk about worker co-ops, to talk about, the contradiction that's always going to exist between employers and employees, saying as they want to maximize their profit at the expense of the employees. Not to mention, within the context of that process, they have the least amount of power, especially if they're atomized as individuals, as opposed to being a collective. Unions still keep that contradiction, even though it allows a presence for those employees to get representation. Worker co-ops eliminates that contradiction. A new one may be created, but that depends on how the worker co-op is organized and whether or not they just end up with an elite hierarchy at the top. I guess my point is, I would love for him to go further than that, but it's what it is. Yang talks about it as a system. That's why I like Yang. That's it, to be honest. The UBI, I even like. I think it's a good idea. But the UBI, I would talk about it slightly differently. I mean, I think you think of all the resources that we have in this country that they've been able to exploit, take out the ground, that were supposed to belong to the people of this country. Think of all the money that we've invested into technology, for fuck's sake, even the internet, like telecommunications, oil and gas. And we get no return on that investment. And they would argue that the return you get on investment is the fact that the thing exists. Do companies function that way? Like, do companies really function from the level of, like, fairness is somewhat of an illusion to some degree. And government doesn't work on behalf of making the argument that there should be a kickback for governmental assistance on issues like this. I don't understand that at all. If a company puts $1 in something, it's going to be looking to get anything back. If a company opens a door for you, it's going to be looking for you to give it $1. So, but the government can invest all sorts of billions of dollars and get nothing back in return for that. That makes zero sense to me. I have no idea why that takes place. If you want to call that a freedom dividend, call it whatever the hell you want. There should be a kickback for those things. West Virginia is one of the poorest states, if I'm not mistaken, like 48th. 25% of the kids in West Virginia are in poverty line. And the poverty line is already too low. It's like extreme poverty. West Virginia gave itself to produce energy for this nation. There's no situation where they should be that dirt poor. And yet there they are. They were exploited. The resources of that particular area was expropriated and sent to the top. Just saying. Shouldn't be that way. I don't know if he's a Trojan horse, though. Like, I don't know if, I don't assume that he's working for anybody. I assume that he's working for himself, that he thinks that this is a good idea. And, I just like him injecting the idea, let's say it that way. But I would never vote for him. Never. The best thing is Medicare for all with the federal jobs guarantee. That tax is blind. Yeah, value-added tax is blind. Have you heard of democracy dollars? I have not heard of democracy dollars. I don't know what those are. I prefer a reverse income tax. Andrew Galloway. You know what's wild about that? Do you know who's trying to get a reverse income tax in? That liberal, that flaming, out in the day liberal Richard fucking Nixon. Richard Nixon. He wanted to have a reverse income tax. Richard Nixon. God. Somebody said Richard Nixon was the last liberal president. EPA. I mean, granted, he was fucking horrible. He was doing illegal stuff. Don't misunderstand me. So this is not a rah-rah for Nixon. But Nixon had a palpable fear of the public to some degree. And as such, was controllable by such. Meaning, public pressure affected the office. Doesn't seem to be that way now. I mean, it seems to be a complete decapitation between what the public wants versus what happens in Washington. And it didn't, that connection wasn't there. I mean, before. Nixon had to hide all the shit he was doing from the standpoint of Vietnam. These days, they don't have this stuff at all. Trump is out there talking about he's trying to regime change in Venezuela and Iran. They're on the day about it. They don't care. At this point, it seems like the public is completely decapitated from the political process. It didn't seem to be that way in Richard Nixon days. There used to be a back and forth. Trudy, what's happened to Trudy? Why wasn't Epstein high-profile 24-hour security? Trudy, that is the billion-dollar question. Giovanni Levine, I missed this one. I'm very fond of my lightweight, compact, semi-automatic Walther PPK-S. Great CC pistol for a small female like me. The name is Bond. Giovanni Bond. I'm not one of those lefties that believe they need to get rid of all guns. I'm not on that camp. I own a shotgun. I fucking love shooting. It's fucking great fun to me as a stress reliever. If somebody told me that giving up my gun would get rid of gun violence, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I don't believe that criminals follow laws in this way. Like, I don't have that belief. And again, I go back to this notion that it seems that there is something deeper within the society that is provoking this. And we are looking at this as individual choices, and I don't think these are purely and entirely individual choices. Look, if you have a country awash in guns, just probability, there's going to be a section of that distribution curve that are nuts. And beyond those people being nuts, there's going to be a section of that probability curve that are just brutally racist and hateful, and that are looking to do chaos and damage. Everybody that may want to do something doesn't necessarily mean they will do it. That's just the probability that does. And this is not even the groups like the gun violence or the gang violence and that type of stuff that takes place in various areas across the United States. Would taking my gun away from me get rid of gun violence one iota? No. Would implementing certain checks and those type of things help? Meaning, like, if we know that that people who abuse their wives or girlfriends or been to jail for such have a higher probability of killing with a gun, then yes, we should stop them from getting guns, and we should see an appreciable change in regards to the number of gun deaths, at the very least from that context. That's the way I look at this issue. I don't look at this issue as ideological. I look at it as a results base. What works? And what of your society is creating this? And here's the catch. And this is kind of an uncomfortable catch, but it may entirely be true. There's nothing to stop it from not being true, other than people just not liking what's being said. It is possible that there are all sorts of triggers in your society that pushes and incentivizes and puts into people's heads this notion of gun violence, not just one thing or the other. Those things may not just be quote unquote video games. There may be all sorts of things, from everything that shows in the movies, the grotesque violence in those movies, the violence in the video games. You may have violence across the board in all sorts of areas. The violence of homelessness, where you can just let a person stand on the street, you just get in your car, you go about your business. The killing abroad that we do with our military, the robbing of the military where violence and might is right, even in cases when it's wrong. All of those things should play into it. It would be weird if those things didn't contribute to it. You know how many of those things you're changing? None. Zero. Meaning that from a standpoint of a human being in this particular culture, it instantiates a certain amount of gun violence that you just have to be accustomed to and deal with, because this is the culture that you want to have. And with this particular culture, it elicits this effect. That's an unpopular opinion, because that opinion goes into this notion that the problem is society itself. Society is fucked up. We're a violent, vicious society. There is a malaise in the society, from the level of poverty to the level of jobs that are just dead end fucking bumfuck jobs that doesn't do anything from the standpoint of human agency. From the level of poverty over the globe. Jeff Bezos by himself could get rid of poverty. Do you not believe that the public doesn't know that? And by virtue of the public knowing that, considers a certain degree of unfairness built into the society and creates a certain degree of anger. By the way, that's true, by the way. There's a level of death that occurs from people who are everything from below the guy who's at the top of the totem pole. It's almost as if there's a societal stress just by functioning in our society. You want to tackle gun violence. You want to deal with something at the end result. I want to deal with this cancer. Here's this Neosporin and the Band-Aid. Let's get this shit straight. Fact of the matter is, you may just have to live with the cancer and just deal with, the sores and the welts and the backaches and everything else associated with it, because this is the society that you got. You want to get rid of that, you go to the root. Marianne Williamson is not a saint in this, man. She makes really good points. The catch is, from a political sense, none of that stuff is actionable. How do you get to the root of an issue like that? How do you deal with the culture issue? You don't. People die off. Your culture changes. Yeah, people die off. Why wasn't Epstein high profile 24/7 security? I gotta be honest, Trudy. That's the question. Honestly, that's That is the billion-dollar question. That is the billion-dollar question. That is the billion-dollar question. Yeah, Trudy, I don't know. I suspect nobody knows. Either somebody paid somebody to... You got 30 minutes. If you choke the shit out of them, we can make it look like a suicide. Either it was that, in which case somebody just kind of turned a blind eye while things were going down. Or it's turning a blind eye while I don't know which. I don't believe he's still alive. I'm not in that camp. But I don't buy this story that these guys are putting out. And a multi-billionaire pedophile, where all eyes are on around the world, and especially in the United States, has every incentive to kill himself. No bullshit. What's worse? I gave this example of Paulus. Hitler was trying to get Paulus to commit suicide. Paulus says, fuck that. But at the same token, you had other members who said, yeah, I'm not going to be taken by the Red Army. I know what they're going to do to me. And by the way, the suicide was a better option. Suicide was between the two, if you were trying to get away from damage, the suicide was a better option. Because what the Soviet Union was going to do to you if they caught you was the march by itself. That's assuming you even made it back to wherever they were going to take you. Like out of 100,000 German prisoners, like 3,000 made it back or something? Like everybody else died. By the same token, Germans don't have shit to complain about, seeing as what they were doing to Soviets, not to mention Polish, Ukrainians, and Jews. So, there's that. At this point, I think Hitler made it to Argentina. That's funny. You know what's wild about that? Do you know that Stalin was an asshole. Like, there's some stuff where you read for Stalin and you're like, wow, that's pretty badass. And there's other stuff you're like, oh God, he's fucking horrendous. All of it's the same person. He's fucking horrendous in general. He's a mass murderer. But the not a step back order, the 227 order, the not a step back. That order, man, that is, of everything that's ever taken place in military history, across the universe. That's where I'm going. I don't even know what happened across the universe. But I'm saying across the universe. And yes, I'm being hyperbolic. The German army is routing the Soviet Union. Yes, I'm going to a history lesson. Because my wife doesn't like these. And I am so fucking booked up on this stuff. You know it's wild? You know you're booked up when channels that you watch, like history channels, you know where they get their information from. Like, it's like, oh, he got that from this book. It's like that level of booked up. I have been binge reading, God, man, Beaver's Berlin, Beaver's Stalingrad, Beaver's Spanish Civil War. I haven't even finished the Spanish Civil War one. Spears' book. Spears' book is amazing. Everything in the book might not be entirely true, but Spears' book. What's the other one? The Last 100 Days. I don't know the author of that one. And there's another war, Third Reich at War. Oftentimes I've listened to them like twice because I'm doing more things at a time. I find that I can pack more productivity into my day if I listen to that while I work. Listen to it 2 or 3 times, it sticks. Either way. Stalin, Order 227, not a step back, not a step back, not a step back. The Soviet Union is getting routed. And it's so bad, Hitler's like, all right, they outnumber us 3-1, but, we're Germans, we're superior, we're Aryans, and, we have a will to fight. Interestingly to note, Hitler's right about that. The will to fight matters. If our education system is so fucked up, and I say that to say as a 41-year-old man going on 42, there's stuff that you need to know to be able to operate and to make certain assessments on not just your government, but other governments and foreign policy. Because the things that governments do in the past, they do now. They do them in different ways, but the same context happens. The Soviet Union is getting routed. completely routed. Like, but Germany is assuming that their encirclement is going to take like millions of men. They think they're going to be able to just kind of win. They have this overly complex thing that they're trying to do in order to get the oil. All right, fair enough. But you got to get the oil because Romanian oil is not enough. And to be honest, that's not enough for your war machine. But if you can get that oil, that war machine can keep ticking along. Because Germany, as long as Germany's places weren't being bombed, they were still able to make their produce. But they could never compete with the U.S. There's a scene in the book where Spear is talking to one of the guys. I can't think of the guy's name. But the guy, he tells Spear, he says, look, I've been trying to show people these numbers. And he says, okay, what? And he says, these are our projected, like, bombers and planes and bullets and things that we can build. This is our projected production rate. And this is America's production rate. And this is Britain's. And this is Soviet Union's. Now, yeah, I've just named 3 countries compared to one. And any one of those countries by themselves was beating Britain. And when they looked at America's numbers, to give it a perspective, do you realize America was arming Britain, the Soviet Union, and had enough military might to create 2 fleets on 2 sides of the planet while still arming the other nations? That is production at a level that is breathtaking. And he tells this guy this, and he tells Spear, and after he tells Spear, he breaks down and starts crying. Think about that. Like, this is fucking phenomenal. Like, this stuff is phenomenal. My wife doesn't get how wild that is. Because you're in a war. Like, your life is at stake. Like, whatever happens, if you lose, this is not a bullshit war. This is total war. They even use the term total war. All of the powers of the governments are used to marshal to the cause of destroying the other government. And there is no, we're going to sue for peace. None of that bullshit. Total war. Germany was going to fight to the end. Why? Because Germany had a peculiar history of the stab in the back stuff with the Jews. Like, when I listen to the Russiagate stuff, it puts me in the mind of that. The stab in the back. The famous stab in the back. Do you realize there were political leaders who was trusted in Germany where they would ask, is this true? Are we stabbing in the back? And it was like, yes. It was all over the place, just like the Russia stuff is. It's fucking phenomenal, man. But Order 227, not a step back. Stalin gives this order after these guys are being routed. These guys are being entirely routed. They're losing tremendously. And it's so bad that the German generals go back in as like, we've won, we're done. Boom, we're done. And even go so far as to say Stalingrad has been captured. And put that shit on the airwaves. Put that shit on the airwaves. Stalingrad was not captured. And not just captured. The issue with the Soviet Union is that the Soviet Union just wouldn't lose. Now, that doesn't mean that they were winning. It just means they wouldn't lose. In many of these situations, do you realize the Soviet Union took down their factories and moved the factories to the fucking mountains? Like, think about just taking down a factory while your people are being killed and slaughtered in mass. People talk about the Holocaust from the standpoint of the Jews. Hitler wanted the Soviet Union for living space. The plans that he had for them was to starve like 30, 40 million people to death. It's astonishing, man. So Stalin gives Order 227. Not a step back. Not a step back. And if you do take a step back, you will be shocked if one of your commissars, meaning one of your leaders, give that order. They will be shot. Now, the movies do this in kind of a comical way, but it wasn't, they tried to make it like people were just being mowed down, and it wasn't being mowed down. And there were other situations where they could redeem their sins in blood. They have certain ways of saying things. It just means you will be sent on very risky missions with attachments that will be sent on risky missions. And, like clearing bombs or stuff like that, or taking these kind of lead positions. But the not a step back order was probably the most badass, like, now don't misunderstand me, Stalin didn't have a fucking choice. Moscow, people like to talk about Stalingrad. The Battle of Moscow stopped the German war machine. They weren't broken, but they were stopped. They didn't win it. They didn't take Moscow. Same thing with Kursk. I mean, they weren't able to take it, but they weren't stopped. Stalingrad was different. Stalingrad was stopped and smashed. And not just stopped and smashed. Stopped and smashed in a way where the people back in Germany was like, what just happened? You told us we had Stalingrad. And not just that, they started putting on propaganda like these guys were the soldiers of Thermopylae, like the last 300. Because at the point where the propaganda wouldn't work, they're like, okay, nobody's buying this. These guys are dying. Our army just got smashed. Let's switch the propaganda to just saying that this is, the last stand of the Trojans. And what the wild part is that those soldiers that were there covered in lice and having nowhere to take a dump, and so they just kind of go in the corner, and freezing temperatures where dead bodies are just kind of stacked to the walls because there's no way to put the dead bodies. Those guys are listening to those radio broadcasts, making the point that those soldiers died. Those soldiers died. They've thrown us away. Hitler needed that to stay there, even if it was just to stay there and die. He needed the troops from the other part. And if Stalingrad gave up, those other troops would have also been caught in the pocket. The generals like to scream that Hitler should have listened to us. In this particular case, they should have listened to Hitler. Because to some degree, part of the failure was mass transport. This is a lot of shit that's in it that's falling out. And it's kind of besides the point. T-34s were fire traps, and you would be forced to drive them at gunpoint. Yeah, T-34 was a good tank in many ways, but it killed a lot of crews. Well, at some point, though, the Russians made a superior tank. And one of the things that came up with the Germans were like, our bullets bounce off their tanks. Like, our bullets aren't working. Our shit's not working. Like Hitler, you talking about a misperception. Like a massive fucking misperception. Like a misperception of epic dimensions. In their mind, the German general staff came up with this notion that the Soviets didn't have the will to fight. And that they were in chaos. They were in chaos. They said, look, they have 3 divisions more than us. They beat us 3-1. Oh, that's wrong. That's wrong. They were beating you 7-1. 7-1. And those soldiers that you thought you were going to catch in a rout, those soldiers hauled ass, and you weren't able to catch them in a rout. Meaning those soldiers that hauled ass were able to go back and resupply themselves. So as Germans, same problem Napoleon had, get further and further and further out, and all logistics go out the window. All logistics go out. If you read Spear's book, Spears gets into how chaotic and how horrible the logistics were. Like, the trains weren't able to run on time. You had Germans like dying of frost death in the trains themselves, like men who were sick and ill, not able to get anywhere, just kind of out there for days in the frigid cold. People living in the open, soldiers, because, there's no way for them to stay. Stalin goes further. Stalin destroys everything 40 miles behind German lines. Think about this. Stalin says everything, I think 20 to 40 miles behind German lines, scorched earth, destroyed. Because Germany was living off the land. And if there was a farmer that could give them a piece of bread, anything, if they could even steal that and shoot that farmer, that would be somewhat of a problem, and they would nourish the enemy. Stalin's point of view was, we cannot have any situation where we're going to nourish the enemy, so we will destroy any and everything that is 20 to 40 miles behind German lines. When Germany finally starts to retreat, they were not going to have anything to retreat while they are being assaulted in that retreat. That was the thought. Now, this is a vicious thought. I mean, can you imagine that? The United States is at war, and the United States says, all right, everything 20 miles behind the front of this particular place is just going to be wiped out in full. Are people living there? Who gives a shit? We can't care about that. That's where he was at. That's where they were at. Now, you can poo-poo that, but the Russian state was literally on its last leg. The Soviet state was about to collapse. Stalin at one point sits down and he says, he's quoted as saying, Lenin made the Soviet state and we fucked it up. He thought his ass was toast. And by the way, Hitler could have won that war. Don't believe otherwise. I know some people like to believe that there's some kind of cosmic will. No, there's no cosmic will in this. The will, in and of itself, Hitler was to some degree right. Could have been sufficient. The problem is Hitler was brutally racist. And people who are brutally racist don't necessarily see the world clearly. They see it through various lenses. Do you realize Hitler had SS to go in line with the military, with the army? And so when the army took a particular area, the SS would come right behind it and start clearing out Poles, Jews, etc., everything else. He was so concerned about that, even up until the last. Even as the German state was collapsing, as the German state was on his last leg, as Hitler was in there killing himself, they were still trying to either kill or eliminate people and force march. It's astonishing, man. It's astonishing. It's fucking astonishing. Money Train James, listen to what JT is saying. Hitler had Germany living beyond its means. Yeah, that's the other part. So Hitler's economics was all fucked up because he stopped. Like, there's a book called Vampire Economy where they talk about Hitler's cannibalizing of the economy. Germany didn't have enough food. They didn't have enough supplies. In fact, to some degree, the war was necessary in order to even just steal those things. What do you think they did with the food? They took the food from the Ukraine and shipped that shit back to Germany. They let the Ukrainians starve. Part of the reason that all of those groups were starving, like the Jews and the Ukrainians, everything else, the goal was to create work camps where they can work people to death. That's the first one. They were going to literally work people to death, feed them like turnip soup, where if you're lucky to get a turnip, and have those people sent to live off that while you work them to death until they get to the point where you can shoot them in the head where they can't work anymore. The food, however, itself was shipped back to Germany. Hitler's policies essentially crashed the economy. The deal he made with the Soviet Union, at one point Stalin was trying to send Germany more copper and everything else because Germany, Stalin knew that he was going to be attacked. He just didn't want him to attack him then. It's like, all right, I know he's going to sucker punch me. But if I give him stuff, he's not going to sucker punch me immediately. Oh, fuck, he hit me anyway. That's kind of how it was. He took the shipment of copper and everything else, says, thank you very much, and attacked. He needed supplies. He wanted living space. And Hitler's economy was all fucked up. And the way that he was going to supply food and everything else to Germans was doing that. Not to mention, there's a level of insecurity that's always missed in this. If you read through the books, it comes up, even though you never really hear anybody talking about it. When the German soldiers, when you're reading the notes from the German soldiers, when they're sending the letters and everything else, the stuff they're stealing outright. They're like literally just stealing stuff from shops in Paris and all these other countries. And they're like, a German soldier, you can be a man here. And they have to, respect you. And they were creating laws where people had to say good day, otherwise they could be shot for not doing so. Like, it's utterly fucking bizarre. It's utterly bizarre. It's utterly bizarre. Utterly bizarre, man. Germany was living beyond its means. But it wasn't just beyond its means. Its assumption was we're going to take the shit anyway, so they didn't care. They didn't care. Do you realize during the time they were in the middle of that war, Hitler was still working with his building projects? He was taking materials that should have been donated or dedicated to the war effort to build his gargantuan, out of sorts fucking buildings. And again, this goes to this notion of insecurity. His point was, we want Germany to be a real power. We want Germany to be respected among other nations. And other nations are going to now respect us. And if Paris is nice, we're going to make this better, etc., etc., etc. It's insecurity. It's Django. Do you remember in Django where as soon as Django was freed out of slavery and he got him a suit, what did he do? He got the flashiest fucking suit he could find. Why? Because he had been denied those things. He had gas on his chest. He wanted to put his foot on the metal, when you first get in the car. In this case, he got flamboyant. I would wager to you that after a year or so, that flamboyance will go away. He would get accustomed to being in the state that he was in, but being in a situation of lack created this kind of need to balance the equation. I'm saying the same thing is true for Hitler in this case. He was brutally racist, yes. But that brutal racism was something that a lot of Germans had. It wasn't just Hitler. A lot of Germans, and not just Germans, by the way, Brits and all of these, many of these people were brutally anti-Semitic. And throughout that society, they had this notion of being stabbed in the back by the Jew. Fucked up part is, many of these people were just Germans. They were acting as if some kind of religious thing has some kind of, some physicality to it. It was utter nonsense. They had all of this voodoo science that they were using in order to kind of make this stuff up. This is kind of my point when I say you can have cultures and societies that get wrapped in conspiracy theories. I would put to you that the Russiagate one is one of them. I'll put to you that Russiagate is one of them. Yeah. The Nazi bell. Oh God, don't get me going. Don't get me talking about that. The Nazi bell. Don't get me going there. What the fuck is going on there at 2:30 in the morning? I'm doing the news. That's what's going on. That's what's going on. We're doing the goddamn news. I know, right? Hitler had a lot of talents, but he was an ideologue and lived in a fantasy world to agree. He was just another pundit writer with political ideas, just like Jamarl. Look, man, Hitler, for whatever people want to think of him, was not special. He wasn't special. You can say militarily bold. Yes, that part's true. But there were a lot of brutally racist people there. So, there's that. Not to mention, here's another thing. When people are talking about the Nazis, they often talk about like it's like, oh, they had their own wing of a military force. A lot of groups did. It wasn't just them. That wasn't uncommon for political parties to have a military wing of those political parties. God, man, that's talking about shit you don't learn. That's another part. Hitler murdered and looted some of the wealthiest portions of the German society in order to conduct a war. That's the other part. Where they, the banking thing, and the church thing too, where they were finding ways to essentially strip money away from the churches and all. Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating, man. It's fascinating. All right. I'm going to end this. I am tired, I am hungry, and at this point, I'm probably just going to go to bed hungry. Like, share, subscribe. We are an hour and 30 minutes. We're just kind of talking around. Menengo Mussolini. It's funny, they used to call America, because before we got ramped up into the war, we weren't necessarily fully engaged. We were just Lend-Lease. They used to call us, they're Italy, because they say Italy was useless. Italy was rather useless. There are scenes where there's a scene where Germans like conquered a mountain or something, and Hitler is like flipping the fuck out. He's like, you got a bunch of mountain climbers, conquering stupid shit. Now the reason why I like Spear's book, and the reason why I know this is going to sound really weird. This is going to sound extremely bizarre because of the perspectives of Hitler. But Hitler is kind of like, I had a conversation one time with a friend of the family, and him and I were talking about my dad, and I was telling him stuff. He says, your dad was just a guy. And when he said that, all sorts of things clicked. Like nobody's business. Like clicked in ways like, oh, right, he's just like me. He's a person. Oh, dad is just a label. Yeah, it's just a label. People invest too much into the label. I would argue that Hitler is a label, and people invest a lot into that label. He was a person, and I sometimes think we fuck up when we don't recognize such. I like when he's having a conversation with Speer, and he's talking about the plans for Berlin and all this other stuff. He's a happy guy. He's an excitedly happy guy. And when Speer is talking about him, a fondness for him is clear. Even now in his writings. And not just Speer, by the way. If you talk to people who were around back then, who were living in Germany during that time, before everything went to shit, they talk the same way. It's fucking fascinating. It's like an intellectual thing of knowing what he did, as opposed to how you felt when you were there during that time period. And how you felt during the time period comes out. The thing is, just what was going on during that time period was outright, utterly atrocious. But he's a person, and they're people, and their emotions and everything else get kind of attached to the moment. It's fucking fascinating to read Spear's book in this sense, because it comes across Like, there are aspects of Spear when he is like pissed off at Hitler, like vindictive at what's taken place and what's been allowed. And there are other times where he's not that way at all. And there's something he says that I love. He talks about the technocrat. And he says this in a sense that there are some people who are technocrats who get into the challenge of things without caring what the consequences. So they would get interested in creating a system that can bomb Britain and kill 1,000 people, but don't necessarily overtly care about the consequences that they're killing 1,000 people. He's like, I don't like those people. Those people can do atrocious things because they're so focused on just whatever they're doing as opposed to the larger issue. But it becomes clear, man. It's so fascinating to read those books and hear their personal perspectives of Hitler and the stuff that was going on when things were going well and when things went to shit. And when things went to shit, oh man. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. All right. Don't use a knife or call the cops for the chicken boxes. Oh God, that's what we were talking about. That was the original story. We are so way off the bat. We are so way off the. God, I forgot that the original chicken story was the story was the chicken box. Mussolini didn't have an army that was worth anything. Well, that's because Mussolini didn't know Hitler was going to go to war. He didn't know. He didn't know. Yeah, I'm going to bed. All right, guys. Like, share. Can't believe this video was about the Tories, the chicken thing, and we've fucking talking about a history lesson. Yeah, this is a massive tangent. I am Siler. This is a massive fucking tangent. I've just, you know, I know what it is. It's like when you do something a lot, and especially like when it's new and it's like right in your head, and it's just right there. And it just kind of comes out. Just kind of comes out. And in this case, it's like one thing leads to another. I thought about having a book club on the show. I don't know. It's like one book leads to another. Like the first, the Spanish-American War book led to stuff about Napoleon stuff. Not to mention lectures and all. I love that stuff, man. Stuff is fucking fascinating. I gotta be honest, I don't know why I didn't like the stuff while I was in school, and then it's where you're exposed to it when you're in school. Yeah, we need to change our education system. We're missing it. We're missing out. We're totally missing out. Like and share. Thanks all. Good night.